Hi, my name is Amanda and welcome back to my channel. So today I will be giving you guys 35 plus underrated things to binge watch on Netflix. I will be putting somewhere on the screen my ratings, Rotten Tomato score, how many seasons and how many episodes, so that way you guys have all of the information that you would need in order to decide whether you want to watch the show or not. And I hope you do, because these shows are some of my favorites. Obviously there are some hyped shows that deserve the hype, but those won't be included in this video. If you guys want, I'll make another video about shows that are worth the hype. There are quite a bit of them that I had to kind of take off of this list because I wanted it to be more curated into the underhyped or underrated show. The first one up is The Politician. So this story follows a high schooler named Peyton, and his whole goal in life is to become the president of the United States. Before he can do that, he has to get into Harvard, and before he can do that, he has to win the student body president election. This show is a satirical comedy about the political climate that we live in and the lengths politicians will go to achieve their goals and to lie and cheat in the different ways that they do. Next up is Hollywood. It is one of my personal favorite shows. It's set in a post-World War II Hollywood, so it's very old Hollywood. It kind of gives you such nice vibes.
Shut the hell up, bitch.
It follows 6 aspiring artists trying to make their way into the industry, having to do a lot of things that are against their moral compass in order to achieve their dreams. And I've always loved those type of stories with morally gray characters because I feel like it's more relatable to who we are as people, because we're obviously not black and white, and most of us would go through great lengths to follow our dreams and to accomplish them. Shameless is kind of a mess of a show. I haven't even finished it. I think I'm on season 9 and there's 11 seasons, and I just found out that that is gonna be the last season, which I'm actually really sad about because I just started watching it. I don't know what I could tell you about this show. It's, you start watching it and you're like, oh shit, this is fucking crazy. And then the more you watch and watch, the crazier and crazier it gets. It kind of just leaves you there like, what the fuck? Who created this? It's one of the shows I would consider that leaves you most connected to their characters. Again, you'll see a common trait in most of the shows that I recommend having to do with morally gray characters. I just think that they're just the best characters to follow stories through, because you see them kind of struggle with what they think is morally correct and morally wrong. I just love that type of stuff. You're gonna hate them one episode, you're gonna love them the next. It really does vary, and they all do horrible things. Never Have I Ever is more of a PG-13 version of the anger I get when it comes to the characters in Shameless. Never Have I Ever is a coming-of-age TV show, but I don't know what it is about this one that's just really different and really angering. She just kind of does the wrong things, but it's so entertaining nonetheless. I am a really big fan of minority stories being told, so I love that the Indian community is finally getting some representation. Next up is a show I just recently started watching called Unbreakable, Kimmy, Schmidt. I think I'm on episode 3. But the plot is just so interesting that I kind of had to put it on here. A girl who gets sucked into a cult with 4 other women are trapped into a bunker, being told that it's the end of the world up there and that they can't go back up because they'll die, and that they are the only remaining life. So for 15 years of surviving that and emotional and mental abuse, they get out. Kimmy, who is the main character, follows her story and how she's kind of making her way in the world with the mentality of a fucking middle schooler. This will forever pain me until the day I die, but I actually saw the actress Ellie Kemper in New York, but was too scared to be one of those fans who doesn't know when not to ask for a picture or to talk to them. That's one of my biggest fears. I would never want to intrude. Looking back on it, I regret it so much. First up is The Order. So this story follows Jack. His mother mysteriously died and he has no idea how. He just knows magic was involved. He goes to school in a university that's known for having like a secret society of magic, but it's kept so under wraps and only select people can get picked in order to become witches and warlocks, I guess, witches and wizards. Jack is picked for the secret society of wizards and witches, and he kind of goes there to avenge his mother's death, but then like for some reason he finds out that werewolves are also a thing. I know I'm like saying this in like a sarcastic way as to make it seem like what the fuck is going on in this show, but it honestly, like, it's not one of those like what the fuck shows. It's kind of just like a show. You get me? Like, you just kind of get fed this information and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. So you're like, okay. So there is also a werewolf society that's also just as secret, if not a little bit more secret than the Witches and Wizards Society. So Jack becomes a wolf and a wizard, and that is like kind of like unseen. So he has to keep both secrets apart from both societies. You kind of see him struggle with that. It's honestly a really good show. So next up is October Faction. This show gave me very much Girl vs. Monster vibes from the Disney movie. The two parents are monster hunters. They kind of met when they were young and they hunt monsters together, and their two kids have no idea up until this one day. I think they're attacked by monsters or something. I really don't remember the plot of this show. I'm not gonna sit here and lie. I watched it a while ago, but I remember being thoroughly entertained. Now we're gonna focus on one of my absolute favorite shows, Haunting of Hill House, a story that follows a family of 7 with 5 kids. The parents are remodeling this house called Hill House. They are doing so in order for them to be able to sell it and then make a lot of money to then build their own house. So that's kind of the premise as to why they are in this random ass fucking house. So while they're remodeling it, they're all living there. And the show cuts between the past and the present. So you see how the children that were in the house grew up and how they kind of survived the trauma they endured and how their coping mechanisms were. I think this is one of those shows that are just kind of like masterpieces. I have rewatched it, I want to say like 5 times, and I probably will keep rewatching it every year on Halloween. It's just one of those shows that are just so incredibly done, and that it'll leave you like not only wanting more but wanting to know every single detail about it. Wait, that's the same thing as wanting more. It'll leave you thinking, that's for sure. If you decide to watch any of the shows that I recommend you, let it be Haunting of Hill House and Hollywood. Those are my absolute favorites off this list. I will continue recommending those until my dying breath. The next up is Haunting of Bly Manor. Now, if you know anything about Haunting of Hill House, it's a different story with some of the same actors. It kind of follows the same thing of like a haunting, the same director as the Haunting of Hill House. They are just such amazing actors and actresses that you just kind of watch their work and you're like, how could these be the same people acting these different roles? It's called The Haunting. That's like the umbrella term, and then it obviously branches out into The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor. I'm not 100% sure if they're gonna keep going. I hope they do because it's such an entertaining like series, I guess you could say. I do in fact actually like The Haunting of Hill House way more than The Haunting of Bly Manor, as you can see from my ratings, but they're different, that's for sure, and I just prefer The Haunting of Hill House. So now we're going to be talking about Containment. Now, I watched this show right when quarantine started, so obviously I felt like the world was ending, just like everybody else did, I'm pretty sure. So this story is, believe it or not, about an epidemic, not a pandemic. This epidemic gets caught in one city, close off that whole city from reaching the outside, kills 100% of its victims. So the second it like infects you, you're dead. And trying to reach their loved ones that are in it, I think it was like ahead of its time. I just thought it was so relatable. Like, I think it's really stupid of me to say, but it was really one of those one of those shows that I was just like, oh wow, this is real life right now. First show I'm going to be talking about is Daredevil. If you aren't familiar, Daredevil is a Marvel character.
He gets blinded by acid. His other senses get amplified by like 500. It's like his other senses are like on steroids. He's a lawyer as his day job, and then in the night he goes and fights crime.
Next up is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I particularly love the first few seasons. I think it's so interesting to see like the inner workings of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra as well. I love that type of stuff. The People versus O.J. Simpson. The actors are kind of phenomenal in this. I'm pretty sure everybody is informed a little bit at least of the O.J. Simpson case. So I kind of went into it knowing the little knowledge that I did, because obviously you kind of grow up knowing two things. He's guilty and that's it. He's kind of just guilty. And I like that it showed the perspective of the prosecution as well as the defense. I thought it was a very interesting twist rather than to just show OJ's perspective. You kind of forget that this was a real case, and it kind of like swoops you into the crime fantasy of it all, and then you kind of like finish and you're like, oh wow. I'm gonna like take it back in and be like, wow, this was like a real thing. Next up is Quantico. I loved season 1. I think season 1 is the best season of the show. The last season did in fact leave me with the same pit in my stomach as Game of Thrones. Last season it was pretty fucking bad. Travels between past and present. So you kind of see the aftermath of a terrorist ploy. You see these wannabe FBI agents at Quantico, and you just think like, how the hell are they possibly tied with this terrorist attack? The more you watch the show, the more you uncover. And How to Get Away with Murder is insane. It follows Annalise, who is a professor and a lawyer. She teaches a course called How to Get Away with Murder. There are these 5 students are taking this class, and they kind of get rolled up in a murder. Next up is Reign. This is a historical drama about Mary Queen of Scots and her arranged marriage with Prince Francis.
There is a love triangle in it. She has enemies. People are trying to kill her.
If you like period drama, then you'll automatically love Reign. Mindhunters, they are kind of creating the profiler unit for serial killers. The show, I'm not gonna lie, is a bit slow just in terms of like pacing. There are times where you'll be watching and you'll be like, wow, this is fucking boring. But the plot is really interesting. Like, if you're into crime and like conspiracies and stuff like that, then you'll obviously be interested in this. It's kind of a more like I would say like realistic version of Criminal Minds with a slower pacing. Imposters. So Maddie is a con artist who goes around making wealthy people fall in love with her in order to then get married and sign a bunch of papers without a prenup and then run away with all of their money. And so this is obviously a very long con, and she makes these people who are vulnerable fall in love with her. So Maddie kind of blackmails the people who she cons into not saying anything about them stealing the money. So Ezra, after a kind of lot of depression, decides to find Maddie. Along the way, he finds Richard and Jules, who are also people that fell in love with Maddie and got conned by her. You kind of follow their mission into finding her and really discovering who she is as a person. They're all still madly in love with her, which I think is an interesting twist to add to the whole show. You see them go through lengths and kind of become con artists themselves in order to find this con artist.